Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Embassy of Saudi Arabia. I wanted to make some brief remarks about Operation Decisive Storm, as well as update you on some of the latest developments and take any questions that you might have. The operation is today in its third week in terms of the air campaign. It has been very, very successful, and in fact it is proceeding beyond its initial, not objectives, but goals. The air campaign has been able to degrade and destroy much of the military infrastructure that the Houthis and Ali Abdullah Saleh possess, whether we're talking military aircraft, helicopters, ballistic missiles, heavy weapons, medium weapons, command and control, air defense, as well as some of the strategic communications routes that they have used in order to try to take over Yemen. The popular committees in the south have been increasingly more successful as they have been receiving more arms from the coalition, and they have been able to push back against the Houthis in a number of areas. So we're seeing progress in that area. Also, we are also beginning to see cracks in the Ali Abdullah Saleh and Houthi military structure. We're seeing commanders defect back to the regular Yemeni military, and this indicates almost the beginning of what we hope is the collapse of the military units allied with Ali Abdullah Saleh and the Houthis. We are now moving towards we also have the United Nations Security Council resolution that was passed yesterday that reaffirms the importance of dealing with the Yemeni crisis through a political process that uses the GCC initiative and the outcomes of the Yemeni national dialogue as the basis for discussions and for the political process and for moving Yemen towards a better place. It reinforces the inadmissibility of the use of force in order to affect the political process in Yemen. It places an arms embargo against the Houthis and former President Ali Abdullah Saleh and their supporters. It reiterates the importance of helping Yemen out of its crisis. So we're very satisfied with the resolution that was passed, as you know, 14-0, with Russia abstaining. The resolution we see as a victory for Yemen and for the Yemeni people and for the legitimate government of Yemen. So we're very pleased with that development. I think it also makes crystal clear to the Houthis and to former President Saleh that the whole world is united in condemning the actions that they have taken, in condemning their attempts to impose their will on Yemen by force, in condemning the actions that they have taken, which are ripping Yemen apart. And conversely, it also is a validation of the steps that the international community and that the coalition have taken in order to protect Yemen and the Yemeni people from a takeover by a militant group that is allied with Iran and Hezbollah. The area that we are now focusing on is the humanitarian situation, and we are working with international humanitarian organizations in order to facilitate and support their efforts to bring badly needed humanitarian assistance to the Yemeni people. We're beginning to see the flow of shipments, whether by ship or by air, into Yemen, and we expect that this will increase in the days moving forward. So this is one area. And then, of course, we are now looking at the political process in order to move Yemen from the situation that it is in now and move it towards a better place. And we are hoping that the various Yemeni factions will come together and agree on a plan for moving forward based on the GCC initiative and the outcomes of the national dialogue. We welcome President Hadi's appointment of a vice president, who also is the prime minister, and we look forward to the legitimate Yemeni government beginning to resume its responsibilities and its duties in order to help the Yemeni people. And having said this, I will stop here and see if you have any questions. I would be happy to answer.
Mr. Ambassador, Eric Schmidt with the New York Times. Just a short while ago, Prime Minister Hadi, speaking to a group of reporters, was sharply critical of the Saudi air campaign. He said there was no logic to the air campaign. He said Saudi Arabia apparently has no interest in any kind of ceasefire. and even suggested that Saudi may have regional ambitions well beyond anything outside of its borders right now. I wonder if you could respond to those remarks that the Prime Minister made to reporters just a little while ago.
These are his personal remarks, and he's entitled to expressing his opinion, but I disagree with them completely. There is no logic to those remarks. Saudi Arabia has no ambitions beyond its borders. We have no ambitions territorially or otherwise in Yemen, other than to see stability and security and safety in Yemen. Instability in Yemen has a negative impact on Saudi Arabia, whereas stability in Yemen has a positive impact on Saudi Arabia. We share a long border with Yemen, and we share strong historic ties, as well as people-to-people ties. The air campaign was started in response to a request by the legitimate government of Yemen based on Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. The use of force was the last resort that we had. We tried for 3 years to work with the various Yemeni factions in order to bring about a political settlement. And at every stage, the Houthis reneged on every agreement they made, 67 agreements to be precise. They moved, as I've said many times, from Sa'da into Amran, into Sana'a. They moved into Taz, and then they tried to take over Aden and the presidential palace there. They imprisoned the legitimate president and his cabinet in their homes in Sana'a. These are not the actions of somebody who wants to arrive at a political settlement. So the decision to respond to the request of the legitimate government was one that we made, that was not made easily, but that was made out of necessity. And so that is why we launched these operations in order to rescue the Yemeni people and protect the legitimate government of Yemen. Yes, sir.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you. You're aware of Iran sending arms to the Houthi rebels. I wonder if you consider Saudi Arabia, in effect, in a proxy war with Iran here, particularly in light of being on opposite sides in Syria as well. And beyond that, how do you keep it from becoming a regional conflict between Saudi Arabia and its allies, including the U.S. as it's arming, and Iran, as we see this similar coalition on both sides pop up in other places?
I would not describe the military operations in Yemen as a proxy war with Iran. I would describe it as a war of necessity. As I explained earlier, we had no choice but to respond to the request of the legitimate government in order to prevent the takeover of Yemen by a radical group that is allied with Iran and Hezbollah. The Iranians, last time I checked, did not have a border with Yemen. There is no reason for Iran to be involved in Yemen. There is no reason for Iran to be supporting one faction against the other. The Iranians should be supporting all Yemenis. That's how we bring about stability and security and safety to Yemen and to its people. Yes. تفضل.
بالنسبة لموضوع قرار الأمم المتحدة امبارح منع السلاح من وصول الحوثيين، الحديث عن إيران لا تقوم بإيصال سلاح أو تزويد الحوثيين بالسلاح، كيف سيؤثر هذا القرار على المعطيات على الأرض وتقدم التحالف في الحرب؟ هل من الممكن تقوم بوقف هذه الإمدادات؟
القرار يمنع امدادات السلاح للحوثيين ولعلي عبد الله صالح واتباعه. فأي محاولات لمد سلاح لهذه الفئات يعتبر انتهاك لقرار الأمم المتحدة، وبالتالي قد تكون هناك عقوبات على الدول التي تخالف هذا القرار. الإيرانيين بالنسبة لمد السلاح نعلم أنها مدت سلاح في الماضي للحوثيين، لكن ما أستطيع أن أقول لك الآن إذا كان مد السلاح مستمر أو إذا كان أوقيف، لأنه المطارات والأجواء اليمنية مسيطر عليها من قبل دول التحالف، والموانئ اليمنية يتم تفتيش السفن اللي تدخل الميناء وتطلع من الميناء. فما أستطيع أقول لك إذا كانت إيران تمد سلاح ولا، لكن هناك فيه تقارير بأن إيران تحاول مد السلاح للحوثي، لكن ما أعلم إذا كانت فعلا مدت سلاح ولا، وأترك الأمر هذا للناطق الرسمي باسم قوات التحالف في الرياض.
هبة القدسي جريدة الشرق الأوسط. سيادة السفير، ما هو تعليقك على المبادرة الإيرانية لوضع تسوية للأزمة اليمنية؟ وهل المملكة العربية السعودية مستعدة بشكل ما للتفاوض أو التنسيق مع إيران لوضع تسوية للأزمة الإيرانية؟ وماذا سيكون الأمر أو ما هي استراتيجية المملكة بعد مرور 10 أيام إذا لم يلتزم الحوثيين بقرار مجلس الأمن؟
بالنسبة للمباحثات في اليمن أو العملية السياسية في اليمن هي مبنية على المبادرة الخليجية ومنتجات الحوار، مخرجات الحوار الوطني اليمني. هذه المفاوضات شأن يمني بحت. هدفها هدفها نقل اليمن من المرحلة اللي فيها الآن إلى مرحلة أفضل للشعب اليمني من أجل الاستقرار والأمن لليمن ولشعبه. لا أعتقد أن هناك دور لدولة مثل إيران أن تلعبه في اليمن. المبادئ والأسس اللي تقوم عليها العملية السياسية في اليمن معروفة ومقبولة ومدعومة من المجتمع الدولي. فهذا الموضوع يهم اليمنيين، وهناك دول الجوار التي مهتمة باستقرار اليمن ووحدة اليمن وأمن اليمن وسلامة اليمن. I may want to the first question had to do with the potential Iranian supply of weapons to the Houthis in lieu of the United Nations Security Council resolution which prohibits that. And my response was that we know that Iran supplied the Houthis with weapons in the past. Since Operation Decisive Storm began, we have control over the airports, as well as we have inspections of ships going in and out of Yemeni harbors. So I'm not aware of Iranian shipments of weapons to the Houthis. We are aware that there are attempts to do so, but I referred the question to the military spokesman in Riyadh with regards to the details. And then the second question had to do with the Iranian proposal for a conciliation or peace talks in Yemen, and my response was that Iran really has no role to play in Yemen, that this matter is up to the Yemeni people, that there is a political process underway that is accepted by the Yemenis and that is endorsed by the international community and now enshrined in the UN Security Council resolution, namely that the basis for the political dialogue is the GCC initiative and the outcomes of the national dialogue in Yemen. And we know what those principles are, and that the issue of moving Yemen forward is one that is up to the Yemeni people and with the support of the neighboring countries in the Gulf states. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Ambassador. Felicia Schwartz from the Wall Street Journal. A follow-up to an earlier question on Prime Minister Abadi's assessment of the Yemen campaign. He also said that in meetings with senior administration officials, including President Obama, Vice President Biden, and Secretary of State John Kerry, that they agreed with his position on the campaign. Do you have any response to that? And then on the peace talks, Oman is involved in some way. Do you know anything about that?
I can't comment on discussions that the Prime Minister of Iraq has with American officials and how he characterizes those discussions. What I can tell you is that the operation has been very effective. The objectives are being met and are being exceeded. We have degraded and destroyed much of the military capabilities, in fact the vast majority, that belongs to the Houthis and to former President Ali Abdullah Saleh. We are very satisfied with the progress of the operations. Our friends in the US have been very supportive of us in terms of intelligence and in terms of logistics, and for that we are very appreciative. I have not heard any US official tell me that the operations were not proceeding well, and I have not heard any US official indicate to me or give me a sense that Saudi Arabia has ambitions beyond its borders. I don't know how the Iraqi Prime Minister got to that assessment, but I would think that the Iraqis should really focus on the problems that are in their own country and find ways to move the country towards reconciliation, to implement the reform agenda that was agreed to in the summer of last year, that would bring the Kurdish community and the Sunni community into the political process, and that would then remove the fertile ground in which ISIS operates in Iran and make it possible for all Iraqis to defeat this terrorist organization. Yes, sir.
Mr. Ambassador, there are reports that at least 5 merchant vessels are stuck off the coast of Yemen carrying much needed food while they're being inspected by Saudi Arabia and the Coalition for Weapons. Can you confirm that? And doesn't this worsen even further the humanitarian needs in Yemen?
I would refer you on this specific issue to the military spokesman in Riyadh, because I don't have the details of this. But what I can tell you is that we are committed to facilitating and supporting the humanitarian efforts and the ability to send in medical supplies and food. There will be a process, of course, that they would have to go through. We have to ascertain that any shipments do not contain weapons. We have to make sure that anything that comes in or out of Yemen is inspected so that we don't have anything being smuggled in or anything being smuggled out. But we are in touch with international humanitarian organizations, and we are looking for ways to ease and facilitate their ability to send supplies to the Yemeni people, and as well as how we can support those efforts. Sorry, you said you had the second part of your question.
I asked you about Oman's possible involvement in the peace talks that Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif suggested. Things that follow up to the earlier question.
I think we have a process underway. I know we have a process underway, and the process is the GCC initiative, the outcomes of the national dialogue. It is the principles that the legitimate president of Yemen, President Abdul Mansur Hadi, laid out in his proposal for convening a meeting in Riyadh, and so this is the basis upon which we will proceed. And I think the Yemeni people and the legitimate government of Yemen ought to be the one that is to be consulted on the way forward. And what we understand and what we know is that the legitimate government of Yemen uses the GCC initiative, the outcomes of the national dialogue, and the principles laid out by President Abdul Mansur Hadi for the convening of the Riyadh conference as the basis for those talks. We have a process. Sorry, let me go back to the slide and I'll come back to it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Guy Taylor from the Washington Times. I wonder if you could address a question about Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Are Saudi forces also targeting AQAP in Yemen? I ask because a U.S. drone strike is reported to have just killed yesterday, or in recent days, a top AQAP figure by the name of Ibrahim Rabesh. It turns out that he was a Saudi citizen. So my question is, what is the Saudi government's position toward these Saudi militants inside Yemen? Are they being targeted by Saudi forces or somehow supported by Saudi Arabia?
Supported? We're fighting Al-Qaeda in Saudi Arabia and all around us. We have had many of our security officers killed by terrorists, and we have our citizens murdered by terrorists. We go after them, we go after the people who finance them, and we go after the people who justify their actions. And we have been doing so relentlessly since 2002. And so the same applies in Yemen. We are working very closely with the US. I cannot get into the details of what is being done in Yemen, but we are very vigilant about fighting and hopefully defeating AQAP in Yemen, and I think our track record in doing so has been very clear over the past few years, and nobody should doubt our resolve, nor should anyone doubt the resolve of the United States in going after AQAP in Yemen.
Have any of the airstrikes specifically
I can't-
targeted AQAP?
I don't want to get into that detail, sorry. Go ahead.
Sir, Jonathan Landay with McClatchy Newspapers. The UN has been complaining that Saudi led coalition aircraft have targeted or hit schools and hospitals, and they have been complaining about the amount of food, the amount of food that's not getting in. Can you respond to that? And could you also respond, the second question, to the Pakistani parliament vote not to send troops to participate, except to protect the Saudi border, but the Prime Minister's brother, Shahbaz Sharif, is in Riyadh today. Could you talk about whether or not he is participating in discussions on Pakistani participation in the coalition?
Yeah, with regards to the United complaints by the United Nations, I'm not sure I understand which ones you're talking about. I think we are working with the United Nations organizations and with international humanitarian organizations in order to facilitate access of humanitarian assistance to Yemen. It is in our interest to ensure that that we minimize the suffering of the Yemeni people and that we help Yemen back on its feet. With regards to the targeting of schools or refugee camps or factories, I think that a lot of this is incorrect information. We have been very careful in targeting military targets, and we have been very careful in minimizing civilian damage, whether direct or collateral damage. I believe that some of the reports that have been mentioned in the news media turned out to be false. This notion that the coalition forces bombed a refugee camp was not correct. The notion that the coalition forces bombed milk factory in Hodeidah turned out to be incorrect. It was bombed by the Houthis themselves using Katyusha rockets. And so a lot of these reports I would take with a grain of salt. We have no problem with anyone investigating these attacks against civilians because it is not our objective to target civilians. It is our objective to degrade and destroy the capabilities of the Houthis. Now, they have recently began to disperse and to hide in civilian areas, which it makes it more complicated to go after them. But we are determined to minimize and to hopefully avoid any civilian casualties. Yes, sir.
شكرا سعادة السفير. فادي منصور من شباب الجزيرة. لو سمحت لي بسؤالين. الأول بداية المؤتمر تفضلت القول بأن العملية تجاوزت الأهداف المرسومة لها في الأسبوع الثالث من شهرها. في نهاية المطاف ما هي النتائج المرجوة من قبل السعودية العربية من قبل المملكة لكي تقول أن هذه العملية ناجحة؟ What's the end game؟ هذا أول سؤال. السؤال الثاني لو سمحت لي تعقيب سريع. ربما رأيت التقرير في هافينغتون بوست حول قضية ما قيل عن تنسيق تركي سعودي لعملية محتملة في سوريا. ما تعليقك على هذا التقرير؟ وفي حال هذا التقرير ليس صحيح، هل تعتقد أن نموذج العملية العسكرية في اليمن صالح لكي يتم عمليا في سوريا؟
صارت أكثر من سؤالين هذه. بالنسبة للعمليات في اليمن، الهدف كان حماية الحكومة الشرعية وحماية الشعب اليمني من سيطرة منظمة متطرفة متحالفة مع إيران ومع حزب الله. وجت نتيجة لطلب من الحكومة الشرعية اليمنية ومن حقها بموجب ميثاق الأمم المتحدة البند 51، وأيضا بالنسبة لميثاق جامعة الدول العربية في هذا الشأن. فهي جت تلبية لطلب شرعي ورسمي من الحكومة الشرعية اليمنية. الهدف أنه هو تدمير القدرات العسكرية التي تشكل خطر على اليمن وعلى دول الجوار، والذي بحوزة الحوثيين وبحوزة الرئيس الأسبق علي عبد الله صالح وأتباعه. الأهداف الذي حققتها الغارات الجوية فيما يتعلق بتدمير الطائرات الحربية، الصواريخ البالستية، الأنظمة المضادة للطيران، الأسلحة الثقيلة والمتوسطة، كانت والله الحمد إيجابية جدا. فكانت ناجحة العملية. والآن نرى أن الحوثيين والرئيس الأسبق علي عبد الله صالح وأتباعه في موقف عسكري ضعيف جدا. ونرى أيضا أن اللجان الشعبية في اليمن بدأت بسبب تمويلها بالسلاح من قبل دول التحالف بدأت في الاستيلاء على مناطق من الحوثيين. فهذا أيضا شيء إيجابي بالنسبة لليمن. في نهاية الأمر الحل في اليمن حل سياسي، وهو مبني على المبادرة الخليجية ونتائج الحوار الوطني اليمني، وعلى الستة أو 7 مبادئ الذي طرحها الرئيس اليمني الشرعي عبد الرب منصور هادي حينما دعا إلى اجتماع في الرياض. فالكل يعلم ذلك. هناك الآن قرار من مجلس الأمن يؤكد الشيء هذا. ففي نهاية الأمر الحل هو حل سياسي. العمليات العسكرية أتت لحماية الحكومة الشرعية في اليمن ولحماية الشعب اليمني نفسه، ولفتح المجال للوصول إلى حل سياسي في اليمن. بالنسبة للأعمال اللي ما نشرته الهافينغتون بوست في بتنسيق تركي سعودي، ما أقدر أتكلم على الموضوع مثلا. ما أشوف إنه فيه شيء يعني احتمالات. وبعدين الأمور هذه أمور يعني أفضل ما نرد عليها.
بما أنه بالعربي كرة جزيرة مع سكاي نيوز، نسألك بالنسبة للقمة المنتقبة بالنسبة لموضوع اتفاق النووي مع إيران والقمة المنتقبة هنا في كامب ديفيد، هل هناك أي معلومات؟ هل يتم التنسيق أو موعد لهذه القمة؟
أعلنوا الموعد في البيت الأبيض. الموعد أعلنوه 13 مايو.
شو التوقعات بالنسبة؟
والدعوة جت من فخامة الرئيس أوباما، هدفها التشاور والتنسيق بين قادة دول مجلس التعاون وبين الرئيس الولايات المتحدة فيما يتعلق في تعزيز وتكثيف وتطوير التعاون الأمني والتعاون العسكري بين الطرفين، وفيما يتعلق بمواجهة التحديات التي نواجهها في المنطقة سواء، بما في ذلك التدخلات الإيرانية في شؤون المنطقة.
ما هي؟
محمد المداح
معروف.
سعادة السفير هل كان وراء موقف الولايات المتحدة منذ اللحظة الأولى في تأييدها ودعمها عاصفة الحزب كان وراء ذلك جهد غير عادي من جانب سعادتكم لإطلاع الإدارة الأمريكية على حقائق الموقف في اليمن وطلبكم تأييد الولايات المتحدة بقوة لموقف الرياض وعاصفة الحزب. السؤال هو هل تحرك المملكة ودعمها بالتحالف نحو عاصفة الحزب قد جاء في الوقت المناسب وقبل انفلات الأمور في اليمن؟ وهل قرار مجلس الأمن الدولي بالأمس تحت مظلة الفصل السابع يؤسس لمرحلة جديدة سوف تشهدها اليمن بعد عاصفة الحزب؟ وهل جاري بعد قرار مجلس الأمن بالأمس تفعيل الحل السياسي في اليمن كما تراه المملكة؟ شكرا.
والله هذا السؤال بالنسبة للعمليات أو تدخل دول التحالف في اليمن لدعم الحكومة الشرعية في اليمن، فجاء في آخر لحظة. بذلت كل الجهود لمحاولة تفادي الخوض في عمليات عسكرية في اليمن، ولكن للأسف ما ترك لدول التحالف أي خيار سوى التدخل عسكريا لحماية الحكومة الشرعية في اليمن. كما تعلم كان الرئيس اليمني الشرعي عبد الله منصور هادي في قصر الرئاسة في عدن وهجموا عليه. كانت هناك محاولات للاستيلاء على مدينة عدن، وكان في تهديدات بقتل الرئيس الشرعي. فالتدخل العسكري جاء في آخر لحظة، لأننا حاولنا بقدر الإمكان أن نتفادى هذا الخيار وأن نحاول نحل الأزمة بشكل سلمي، ولكن الحوثيين والرئيس الأسبق علي عبد الله صالح وأتباعهم ما تركوا لنا أي خيار في هذا الشأن، فاضطرينا أن نلبي طلب الرئيس الشرعي للتدخل لحماية الحكومة الشرعية وحماية اليمن من هذا الخطر. وفيما يتعلق بالمرحلة السياسية أو إيجاد حل سياسي للأزمة في اليمن في ظل قرار مجلس الأمن، الواحد يقول إن شاء الله هذا هو الهدف. اليمن، الحل في اليمن يجب أن يكون حل سياسي، ويجب أن يكون حل مبني على المبادرة الخليجية ومنتجات الحوار الوطني، وعلى المبادئ اللي طرحها فخامة الرئيس اليمني الشرعي عبد الله منصور هادي عندما دعا للاجتماع في الرياض. والمملكة العربية السعودية ودول التحالف تأمل أن يكون هناك إجماع من قبل جميع الأطراف في اليمن على السير في عملية سياسية من أجل إيجاد الأمن والاستقرار والسلام في اليمن. Maybe
Hi, Justin Dishwell with ABC News. Has the air campaign managed to allow taking back any ground from the Houthis? And can you be effective in doing that without sending in ground troops?
Yeah, we believe so. We have the popular committees who are Yemeni fighters who have been receiving weapons from the coalition, who are on the ground pushing back against the Houthis. They've cleared large areas in Aden. They have cleared areas in other parts of Yemen. I think I refer you for more detail on this to the military spokesman in Riyadh. The air campaign has now been 3 weeks. We expect that there are cracks, as I mentioned, in the Houthi military leadership and in the units that belong to former President Ali Abdullah Saleh, with commanders defecting to the regular military. We expect to see more of this as the pressure intensifies. They have no choice but to give up their quest to take over Yemen by force, because they will fail. We will make sure of this, and we have been making sure of this. There is no circumstance under which the Houthis and former President Ali Abdullah Saleh will prevail in any way, shape or form in Yemen. We will continue the campaign. We have, as I mentioned earlier, degraded tremendously their military capabilities, and we are beginning to see cracks in their leadership, and we expect that those will increase, and we expect that in the end wisdom will prevail on their part and they will join the political process. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is Yemen's best friend. When Yemen ails, we ail, and when Yemen is prosperous, we prosper. We have no ambitions in Yemen, territorial or otherwise. We want to be the best friend of every Yemeni, irrespective of their ethnicity or their background. We want to have a stable, secure, prosperous Yemen because that has a positive impact on Saudi Arabia. Problems in Yemen have a negative impact on Saudi Arabia, whether we're talking about refugees, whether we're talking about becoming a safe haven for terrorism, whether we're talking about... So our objective in Yemen is to help Yemen, not to hurt Yemen. Our objective is to ensure that Yemen it can become a prosperous, thriving, safe, secure country in which all Yemenis, irrespective of their ethnicity or their religious background, can live as equal citizens, including the Houthis. People forget that it was the GCC initiative which opened the door for the Houthis to participate in the political process when it was first presented. And so we contributed to them becoming part of the political process from which they had been excluded for years. But unfortunately, they came into the political process, used their force in order to affect the political process, and then eventually used their military to take over the government and try to take over the country. That's not acceptable. And so our objective in Yemen is to help the Yemeni people and to help Yemen as a country.
How long do you expect this air campaign to take? How long are you willing to participate in it?
We have stated, the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman bin Abdulaziz, has made it very clear that this operation will continue until the objectives are achieved. There will be no half measures, and there can be no half measures. Go ahead.
Secretary of State John Kerry said recently that the U.S. has been aware of Iranian shipments to Yemen in the past, and I'm wondering if Saudi Arabia had expressed in the last 3 years request to the U.S. to intercept and stop those weapon shipments, and whether Saudi Arabia was frustrated the U.S. didn't do more to interdict weapon shipments from Iran to the Houthis.
We have been warning about the Iranian support for the Houthis for more than 3 years. They have been sending them weapons, they have been sending them equipment to manufacture weapons, they have been sending them advisors, they have been sending them trainers from the Revolutionary Guards as well as from Hezbollah. The evidence is overwhelming. And so we intercepted a ship, the United States Navy did, some time ago that was carrying weapons going from Iran to the Houthis, including shoulder-launched surface-to-air missiles. The Yemeni intelligence services had detained Revolutionary Guards operatives and Hezbollah operatives, who the Houthis proceeded to release as soon as they captured Sana'a. And so the evidence is overwhelming. And our sense is that the role, Iran's support of the Houthis is a negative development. It is a development that leads to more conflict in Yemen, that leads to more war in Yemen. And so we are working with our coalition partners and the United States to ensure that such support ceases and that Iran is not able to supply weapons to the Houthis.
Would Saudi Arabia like to see the U.S. do more earlier?
That's hindsight. I mean, everybody would like, in hindsight, everybody wants
Would Saudi Arabia like the U.S. to do more now?
I think we're working very closely with the U.S. on trying to ensure that Iran or any other country will not be able to provide weapons to the Houthis or to former President Ali Abdullah Saleh. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
شكرا سعد سفير. سؤال آخر، لا شك أن الوضع الأمني في الخليج ككل يبدو من وجهة نظر السعودية كان يتطلب هذا التدخل في اليمن، وهناك إحساس بأن الظروف تتغير في تلك المنطقة باتجاه زعزعة الاستقرار. هل تعتقدون أن المرحلة المقبلة إلى النقل الحالية تتطلب حوارا صريحا ما بين المملكة العربية السعودية والجمهورية الإيرانية من أجل إعادة الاستقرار إلى المنطقة، أم أن هذا الحوار لم يحون أولا مبارك؟
المملكة العربية السعودية هدفها الأمن والاستقرار في المنطقة، هدفها السلام، هدفها علاقات حسن جوار مع جميع الدول بما فيها إيران. المملكة العربية السعودية لها 35 سنة مدت يدها بالنسبة لإيران، ولكن إيران لن تتجاوب مع المملكة العربية السعودية. إيران لن ترى أي شر من المملكة العربية السعودية، بعكس ما نحن نراه من الإيرانيين. الأعمال التي تقوم بها إيران سواء في لبنان أو سوريا أو العراق أو اليمن أو غيرها من الدول في المنطقة، هذه أعمال معادية بالنسبة للمملكة العربية السعودية، لا مثيل لها بالنسبة لما تقوم به المملكة تجاه إيران. فالمملكة مستعدة للتعاون مع أي دولة من أجل الأمن والاستقرار، ولكن التعاون لازم يكون على ما قالوا two way street. ما هي مسألة إنه نمد يدنا بالنسبة من أجل الصداقة والتعاون ويكون الرد عدوان على المملكة العربية السعودية. Yes.
What kind of Houthi involvement would you be comfortable with in Yemen? And the Iranians have called for a new government. Secretary Kerry before has described the Hadi government as unable to deliver. Do you think that there's a need for new elections?
The role that the Houthis can play in Yemen is exactly the same role as any other Yemeni faction. They are Yemeni citizens. They are entitled to participate in the political process. They are entitled to run for office, and they are entitled to vote. I mean, the role that we see for the Houthis is exactly the same role as we see for any other Yemeni. But it can't be done by force, and it can't be done using arms, and it can't be done by intimidating people. With regards to the government of Yemen, the government was put in place as part of a transition that was agreed upon. And the logic behind this transition is that it would be an interim government during which the Yemenis would rewrite the constitution. They will have election laws. They will decide in terms of things like districting and governorates and provinces and so forth. And then they will move towards elections, which will then lead to a more permanent government. So this is really a transitional government that was established per the outcomes of the National Dialogue in Yemen and the GCC initiative. The decision on who should be president of Yemen is a decision that's left up to the Yemeni people. And should they be able to transition through this political process, which we hope and pray they will, and we will support them in every way we can, then it will set the stage for new elections in Yemen for a permanent government. And it's up to the Yemeni people to decide who their leadership should be at the end of the day.
We have time for one or two more questions.
نادي الرئيسي وذا العربية. سعادة السفير، عودة لسؤال سابق، قلت بأنه استمرار الضربات العسكرية الجوية مستمرة منذ 3 أسابيع. هل يمكن الاستمرار بدون نشر قوات برية وخصوصا في ضوء الحديث عن تشكيل قوة عربية مشتركة؟ ومن أين تأتي هذه القوة إذا كنا تحدثنا عن نشر قوات؟ هل هي من مصر، من الأردن، من دول الجوار، من أين؟
كل الخيارات مطروحة، كل الخيارات تدرس. الآن احنا في المرحلة الجوية في العمليات الجوية ومستمرين في هذه العمليات، لكل وقت حديث على ما قالوا. ففي تشاور قائم بالنسبة لموضوع القوات البرية، ولكن ما لا زلنا في مرحلة العمليات العسكرية وسنستمر في ذلك. ونامل أن يستطيعوا اليمنيين جميع الأطراف بما فيهم الحوثيين واتباع الرئيس الأسبق عبد الله صالح أن يتفقوا على الخوض في العملية السياسية بناء على المبادئ اللي طرحها الرئيس الشرعي لليمن عبد الرب منصور هادي لإخراج اليمن من الأزمة التي هي فيها الآن.
يعني الخيار موجود
كل الخيارات مطروحة.
Mr. Ambassador, I'd ask you a second part of my question about Pakistani parliament vote not to send forces to participate, or aircraft to participate in the coalition, but only to help protect territorial integrity of Saudi Arabia. Shahbaz Sharif is in Riyadh today. Are there continuing discussions now on the Pakistani contribution to the coalition? And how does Saudi Arabia view the vote of the Pakistani parliament?
We have a historic and strategic relationship and alliance with Pakistan, and that relationship is unshakable, irrespective of who is Prime Minister in Pakistan. And I believe that the Pakistani government and the Pakistani military and the Pakistani people are committed to that alliance and to the security and safety of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Pakistani parliament made a decision, and that is really an internal matter for Pakistan. The Pakistani government has expressed its support to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in the strongest possible terms and has expressed its readiness to do whatever it can in order to help defend Saudi Arabia should there be a threat against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. With regards to Pakistani officials or Pakistani personalities being in Saudi Arabia for discussions, there's nothing unusual about it. It happens every day. We have very strong, very deep, very solid, very strategic relations with Pakistan, and those relations will continue. Can I take one more question? Okay.
I would like to, Laurent Barthélémy from AFP, Agence France Presse. I would like to come back to this political process that you have mentioned. Are there any signs that the Houthis, the forces of former President Saleh, are willing to participate in any way in this dialogue? And do you see any progress or any signs?
I don't want to comment on or speculate, but I believe that any wise and any rational human being will know that the attempts to take over the country by force have failed, will not succeed, and that any political role that the Houthis would seek to play in Yemen has to be based on the political process, and that at the end of the day they will achieve much more in terms of being part of Yemen's fabric by the political process than by the use of force. And it is our hope that they will see this wisdom and adopt a more practical and pragmatic approach that will serve their people much better going forward in Yemen. Now we know and we hear about delegations from former President Saleh's coalition visiting a number of countries in order to seek ways out of this crisis that they're in. We hear or reports about the Houthis trying to use certain countries to reach out to other countries. But what really is important is for them to recognize that we seek nothing but good for Yemen and for the Houthis, and that for them to achieve their objectives, they really should accept the political process, which ironically they accepted 3 years ago, but they violated consistently, in order to be part of the political process that can help Yemen transition towards a better future. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming. Take care.
Thank you.